The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Cities 92.9, its staff, management, or advertisers.
Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And with me in studio, you know him, you love him, it's Mike Kirkton. And he's running as state representative in the 105th District. It's a huge district, 3 miles from top to bottom.
Yes, it is, Kat, and thank you for having me on again. It's great to see you today. Yes, it really is a huge different district. It takes just about 3 hours to go from the southern part, like here in Bloomington Normal, all the way up to LaSalle County. So, and we're driving the district every day, putting a lot of miles on my car, to get around and see everybody.
What do you drive?
It depends. One day it's a GMC, and then the other day it may be the Jeep Patriot. So we're trying to spread the mileage out a little bit so it doesn't affect one
gas
vehicle.
Prices. Oof,
yeah, and gas prices are challenging.
One thing I really am just dying to ask you about, and I've wanted to ask you since you came in studio, the budget. So the budget, I don't know if you had saw that it's kind of in the works right now. They literally have we're pre-recording this segment, or 2 days for the spring legislative session until it ends.
Right.
Now, what about that in and of itself would you change? I feel like the budget is always last.
I haven't heard a lot of details on the budget specifically in specific areas. I've seen pictures of the budget, and the stack is like 2.5 feet high, and how they expect a legislator to kind of read through and get all the details out of that it's pretty amazing. And our legislators, some of them do a really good job of digesting that. But right now, the budgeting process and the way it works in the state of Illinois, and the Republicans, again, are in a super minority. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just more important that the 105th District and I make sure that I'm voicing their opinion on what's important to them.
And getting that fit into the budget.
And getting that fit into the budget, correct. So, we still may be in a super minority, but it's well worth it to stand up and call other representatives when they're doing it wrong, quite frankly. And again, it's about the constituents in the 105th that are most important, and making sure that their voice is heard.
Right. And what are some of the things you've heard in the 105th District? I know it's really fun to see a lot of the candidates, you're going out, you're talking to the constituents, and you're gathering information on the constituents and what the number one issue is. So what is the number one issue so far that you've heard in the 105th?
I am so glad you asked me that. For example, on Monday, I was speaking to the Rotary over in Henry, Illinois. The previous Friday, I was in a meeting and talking just to farmers within the district that live in the district. The previous Wednesday or Thursday, I met with a general manager of a manufacturing plant in the district, and just trying to put together and getting all their issues and concerns into the district. And basically, I will tell you what the top three are. The first one is right to repair. It's really important to the farmers in the district. The second one, just as important, and this is important to everybody in the district, is the motor fuel tax and the price of fuel right now. As farmers start looking at spring planting and the cost of inputs into spring planting, it's getting to be quite cost prohibitive. And so I think a lot of farmers are concerned about how they're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what it looks like in the 105th in regards to wheat farmers. I don't know if there's a whole lot of wheat here in central Illinois, but I was looking, and wheat prices are actually going to, be more in demand. We are going to be selling more wheat as Illinoisans. My gut reaction is, oh, well, that's actually good for wheat farmers. But then I started thinking, well, it's a double crop. Wheat is, and you double crop it with soy, and it gets into the weeds a little bit. But then you are also stacking these these motor fuel taxes, these fuel, it basically burdens. That's what it really does feel like. And
Yep.
I don't know how a farmer could survive these motor fuel taxes, because you got the planting, you've got to fill your combine, you've also got to haul things back and forth.
Right.
And corn, I know that's a big thing, right? Where they haul back and forth.
Right. And with spring planting, the inputs, so we're talking about fertilizer and those kinds of things that they use for planting. Corn requires more than soybeans. So what you're going to see some farmers do, and I think a lot of them, when they're looking at costs of chemicals and fertilizers on their fields, I think a lot of farmers are rethinking, well, maybe I don't need to plant, maybe I won't plant corn this year. Maybe I'll plant soybeans instead, because it requires less inputs. So less fertilizer, less chemicals go on to plant soybeans. And so you're seeing a lot of farmers starting to rework how they're going to start this spring planting. And we've already seen, they're predicting for the state of Illinois, specifically, several million bushels less in corn than in previous year, and what was originally predicted for 2022 and 2023 in corn production.
Wow.
And I'll tell you the third thing, you asked me about the top three. We've talked two. The third one is workman's comp insurance in the state of Illinois. I talked to the general manager of a fairly large manufacturing plant. I was saying up more in the northern part of the district. I'm not going to mention a specific company. They have about 600 employees, have been able to expand here in our district, which I think is a great thing. We're not only keeping that business.
God bless them, because God knows that
we got
it
them
is
to
hard
expand. We got to help we're helping them to expand. But with their 600 employees approximately, they pay between $1.5 and $2 million annually in workman's comp insurance to the state of Illinois.
Whoa, that's quite a bit.
It is quite a bit. Now, you know, a farmer is a business, and farmers have people, or many farmers have individuals that work for them. They have to pay workman's comp on, just like manufacturing. So, you know, when we talk about farmers, let's not forget that they're also in a business. And if you look at it that way, how are we in the state of Illinois and in the 105th district continuing to support that business and help that business expand, or keep that business within the state of Illinois?
Yeah, well, and that's one thing too, where, you know, people forget that that's what it is. Farming is a business, right?
Absolutely.
And people were really critical of some farmers who took out those PPP loans. One thing I wanted to ask you was, where is that money going, that workman's comp money? That millions of dollars, right, that you're paying in workman's comp insurance. Where do you think Illinois is putting that, if anywhere? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like money goes places and it just kind of sits there, or like, I don't know where it would go.
That's a good question. I don't know either. I really don't. And I don't think it's a good question. And I think we need to find out and get an answer to it. Let's talk about the motor fuel tax again. I mean, we were originally told that when we collected that tax, the state of Illinois would lockbox that money, and it would only be used for road and bridges improvement. That's not been the case at all. The legislature has used it for many other pet projects and other pet peeves. And unfortunately, that money is not being spent what it was intended to. And if you don't believe me, drive State Route 24 between Gridley and El Paso, or Gridley east to Fairbury, and just drive that road, and you'll see that the motor fuel tax money is not being spent quite the way we expected it to.
Yeah, and they're talking about doing these tax cuts, and they're kind of being very deceptive, at least the Democrats in Springfield anyway. And I will even say some Republicans are being a little deceptive about those tax cuts.
Yes, they are.
It's only for temporary tax cuts. We're talking 6 months. So they're pushing this number out. I think it's like $1.3 billion worth of tax cuts within this $45 billion budget that they just drafted up. And they're trying to promote these tax cuts. And I don't know, how would you address that as a state representative if there were to be some tax cuts? How would you present that to the people? And I feel like they're duping me, right? I mean, we're the highest taxed one of the highest taxed states in the nation. And
Right.
McLean County itself, I found out the other day that we have some of the highest property tax. We're taxed at every level. I mean, it's insane. Even Bloomington Normal, and that's all city government, and I get that. But why is it these state representatives try to pass off like these tiny little like success stories, and it's just like in the grand scheme of things, if you like punch me in the face, but like you didn't punch me in the face and make me bleed from my nose, it's still like it
Right.
still hurts that you punched me in my
Still
face.
hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's just a ploy. I do. I don't think there's any real meaning behind it, and I don't think there's any real intent behind it other than midterm elections are coming up. And so the Democrats are doing this in order to continue to foster goodwill.
I'm gonna do my liberal snap. Like,
right.
Have you ever seen? When I was in college, and and all of my friends, right? They'll do like the liberal snap. I don't know what it is when they agree with something, so I've been kind of doing it as a joke.
I can't do that. I've never seen that because I'm not a liberal.
Well, we're pushing up against a break here, but Mike Kirkton, tell us where we can find out more about you, and is there anything else we really should know about in these coming days and in these election times?
Yes, absolutely. The first thing I would say is go to KirktonforIllinois.com. I have a website. It's got my calendar on there, where I'm going to be in the district on any given day. And it's also more information about me, Mike Kirkton, and my family is on the website. Come check us out. And I will tell you, the most important thing is you got to vote. If you want to change things in the state of Illinois, you got to get out and vote. The last midterm elections in one county within this district, we had a 17% turnout. We are not going to change things in Springfield if people don't get out and vote. You know, they talk about the grassroots being the precinct committeemen, and that's a true statement. They're the heroes. They have got to work hard and get people out and get them to vote. Help them get out and vote and know where they're going. And know who you're voting for. Do some research. Know who you're voting for before you walk into that voting booth so that you can make an informed decision and vote for Mike Kirkton.
Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Come back after the break. We're going to talk more about the importance of local elections. And actually, I've got a story for you about these petitions that were contested for the county board candidates. You're going to want to hear Conservative Cat. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And with me in studio, I have McLean County Clerk from the clerk's office. She's here, Kathy Michael. You know her, you love her, and we're going to talk a lot about these two hearings. Now, Kathy, I just want to know how it was within the first hearing. So all of these county board members, they were county board candidates, not members yet, but they were all contested. Their petitions were contested because of the numbering situation, and there were two Democrats that were actually in the same boat, but their petitions weren't contested. The Democratic Party, and there were a few, we've got Annette Fellows, Anna Darrow, I think I'm saying that right, Kara McMorris, and then Sarah Breeden. And
Annette Fellows is a Republican, so she was a respondent.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, there were seven.
And
seven
Jill Blair
cases
was
filed.
her objector.
Shana Wachinsky.
And Shana Wachinsky was filing against Vicki Schultz, and this was all on behalf of the electoral board, and it was up to you guys to hear this and to try to say whether or not these county board candidates, all Republicans, there were 5 Republicans that were contested,
Correct.
whether or not they could be on the ballot. And you guys in your second hearing had decided, yes, we will allow you to be on the ballot. And how did that kind of come about, and why was the board set up the way that it is? There's 3 members on that electoral board that heard these McLean County candidate basically objections to their petitions. Now, why is that? Why were you on the board in comparison to somebody else?
Right. It's like a little mini trial, really. And we were the the jurors on the trial by law. I mean, statutes, I don't know how many years it's been set up this way, but it's called the Electoral Board, and this happens in every county. When there are objections like this, it goes to the Electoral Board, and then the evidence is presented by both sides. And that's what we heard in the two different hearings. And that's one member from the state's attorney's office, one member from the county clerk's office, and one member from the circuit clerk's office. And we could send representatives from our office if we wish, as did the state's attorney. He felt he had a conflict, so he sent a representative, and it was attorney Mary Cole. And so it was Don Everhart, myself, and Mary who heard the evidence. So I don't want to say it's nerve-wracking, but it's very important, and it's the process. Everyone has the right to make objections if they feel petitions and things like that haven't been filled out right on all sides. So we did hear the evidence. The reasons there were two, because they actually get served, these folks that are going to testify on both sides, get served by the sheriff's office. And so in order to have these hearings, we have to have documentation that they have been served. And Annette Fellows was out of town, so she couldn't be involved in that first hearing, and that's why we had the second hearing to hear the objector and the respondent on that one.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would have all been done, could have been done at one hearing.
At one hearing. Okay. Now, the assistant state's attorney, I heard that she had some sort of question to the attorney that was representing all of the objectors. Is that even a legal thing to do where one attorney represents all of these objectors?
Well, I think, that's the law, again, and they hired, or however you want to say it, they all happen to have the same attorney, Mr. Murdoch, and so he presented all their evidence for them.
Do you know how they paid for Mr. Murdoch?
I do not. I don't know any of those details. No.
Yeah, was that a question that kind of popped up in the hearing?
No, that I think would have been inappropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think all the T's were crossed there with representation, and everybody presented their evidence, and the objectors did, and the respondents, and then we as a panel got to ask questions of both sides as well. And we heard all the evidence, and then made our decision to reverse the objections based on the evidence we heard.
Right. So what kind of evidence maybe stood out to you that made you want to reverse those objections?
Well, I think we were all in agreement, and we made that statement too, is you have to have so many signatures when you go out to become a candidate. The numbers, the petition forms, it says in statute, should be or shall be numbered. It says shall be bound in the left-hand corner like a book. All those different criteria. And so one side said, you didn't follow the rules. But there were appellate courses who reversed those decisions, many decisions that were made like that. And we weighed that evidence. When you look at the preponderance of the evidence, there was no fraud, there was no,
Malice.
You're only talking 4 to 5 pages of 24 signatures. But some folks would argue, and they did, it says in the statute, you have to number your pages. But again, to me, there were enough appellate court cases that said, this is, I don't want to use the word minor, but it was more directory. I had to look up directory than mandatory. And so that was key to all of us to say mistakes were made. People are human. This wasn't an egregious enough to keep these people off the ballot.
Yes. Now, you have run as a Republican for McLean County Clerk's Office. I would imagine that, me as a Democrat, if I was an objector, I'd be like, well, the board is biased, right? There's Don Everhart, there's McLean County Clerk Kathy Michael, and she's a Democrat, and she got to him. And this assistant state's attorney, and her name is, again, Mary Cole. Mary Cole. And I don't know her party affiliation, but, I mean, why would that not be a partisan board?
Well, by law, you have to have a representative, and we wouldn't have gone, or anyone else gone, are you a Republican or Democrat? Because if you're one or the other, you can't sit on the board. I mean, that would have been biased as well. So you have to trust in the honesty of the three people that are representing you. Because
you hold those offices.
Partisan. Do you wonder sometimes, does that come up? to me, the three of us, I think, have very good reputations around the county. But even then, you might wonder, but that is the law. We, by law, were represented there. I don't know Mary's party affiliation. I'm guessing it might, who would know? So who would say she's partisan if you don't know her party affiliation,
right?
Other than to ask her, perhaps, or you can look it up. But you have to rely on the honesty of the people on the board and weighing the evidence. And I would challenge people before they start going down that road, because I think voters get so tired of that, of the partisanship and everything, and sometimes rightfully so. Look at the evidence that we looked at. And perhaps you would have made the same decision when you see appellate court cases that have said, no, we shouldn't kick these people off the ballot. But then others might disagree. So they have an opportunity to appeal that decision if they wish.
And that brings us to our next question. So they are appealing it. That was the big thing that I was about ready to ask. We had to set it up a little bit so you guys understand what's going on. They are appealing that decision. Now, have you ever, I found that out through the circuit court. They had appealed that decision, and there's 7 appeals. And now, whether that means they're going to be heard by different judges, whether that means they're going to be all heard at the same time, I still don't know. I've got to call the circuit court again. But I will get that for you guys. As soon as I know, you'll know. I don't think Kathy knows. At this point, she, as the McLean County Clerk, has to take those appeals and get something ready for the McLean County Clerk's office. Right.
Well, that's a good question, too, because we haven't gone through this process before. I went through a couple of objections maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but it was just one. So I'm waiting to hear, because no one has contacted me yet on the appeal. I'm just hearing the rumors, but you verified that, I think, today. And it's my understanding that, because I thought, oh my goodness, do we go through the whole hearing again, which is fine, that's part of the job. But we just have to prepare the paperwork to give it to the circuit court's office, is my understanding. And the judges then weigh the evidence and they take it from there. And I don't know the timeline, but of course we're working on preparing ballots right now and proofing ballots, so I would imagine it's a pretty short, brief timeline to get this next step completed.
Yeah, I found that out, and I called, and they said, yes, there are 7 appeals, so that's about, and Murdoch, he would be the one that filed those appeals on behalf of the objectors. So all 7 of them have appealed it. So it could go up to it's going to go to the circuit court, and then they've got to hear it first. But then it could go up to an appellate court, correct?
Well, another good question. We're going to find out, I guess, because I think that's my understanding. It goes to the circuit court first, which they're apparently, on what you found out today, that has been filed. And then let's say the judges agree with the electoral board and they stay on the ballot. It's my understanding that it could again be appealed to the appellate court.
Okay, so the circuit court has to listen to it. Then they look at it and they say, you know what, are we going to stand by the decision that the electoral board, what you guys came up with, and keeping these people on the ballot? Now, if they say that and they still are unsatisfied, the Democrats who are objecting, that's Jill Blair, Shana Wachinsky, Anna Darrow, Kara McMorris, Sarah Breeden, and if they still are unhappy with that, they can take it all the way up to the appellate court. Then, if they're unhappy with the appellate court decision, they could take it up to the Supreme Court, right? Now, that's jumping a lot. I know it's jumping from where we're at, point A. Just found this out that they actually appealed it, and the circuit court is kind of acting as like a buffer, right, to clogging up our appellate court system, I'd imagine, and that is the goal of this electoral board as well, is acting as let's hear it here at our county level first, and let's try to bring it down a little bit. Let's bring down some temperatures and come down to a decision.
So that brings up another question. What if the circuit court decides that, well, they should have been removed from the ballot? Would the other side then have an opportunity to object to that and take it to? So it's an interesting process. And what's important is that this is what's great about America. You know, on the level of the county, you know, it all starts here on the local level. That people have an opportunity to scrutinize, to judge, to watch, and we need that. Where it goes from here and how people react and voters react, that's another story. But this is the legal process.
Yeah, and it's a process. It's going to be a long process, I'd imagine, and your office is going to be busy as well. Have you seen anything quite like this, where an actual appeal? Have you served on an electoral board in the past, or is this sort of not regular?
Well, that's how far back we go. I think going back 5, 6, 7 years ago, I did for one case. So that was pretty. I don't think it was an appeal or anything. So no. So this is new, and it's it's very interesting, and it really put both sides. The work that they've done in it to bring their witnesses and things like that. That's how adamant each side is that they're right, and they have the right to do that.
It's a competitive election. This is kind of fun. I don't know about you, but
learn about the law and everything and all the options. I think in the end it'll be a good thing, and the voters will ultimately decide how things turn out.
Yeah. So, are you up for the challenge and the McLean County Clerk's Office? And is this going to be a challenge?
I just told my 96-year-old mother when she asked me why I was running again. I said, well, I love a challenge, and I don't think there's a lot of challenging jobs out there, and this sure is, when you learn something new almost every day. And it's a good feeling. People kind of get mad at each other sometimes, but in the end, this is democracy at its finest, with the elections for the voters to decide and make that decision. And I'm glad that in America, the voters get that decision to do so. So we're proofing ballots right now, so we will be anxious for the results of this and when we can do the finalizing of that. I think we've got about 2 weeks yet to get those done, because early voting starts May 19th.
So this ballot has to be solidified.
Yeah.
So this circuit court is going to have to act fast on their decision. And then once they come to a decision, either the objectors or the Republicans who are being objected to have to decide to appeal, right? So either way the wind blows, the opposing sides would have to say, you know what, no, circuit court, I want it to go this way, or I'm going to appeal your decision. The Democrats could do that, or the Republicans could do that, who are being objected to their petitions.
Exactly, and I'm sure this has happened all around states, all over the country. So there's got to be a timeline, because they'd have to have a pretty prompt timeline, because the jurisdictions, we've got to get our ballots ready. So since you have broken this news, that thanks a lot, that we have this case indeed happening, we'll start researching what our deadlines are and wait to hear from the courts, hopefully soon, of what we have to provide for them.
And I heard some whispers, and then that they were thinking about appealing from the Republicans, right? And I was like, I had a gut feeling as soon as the second hearing had happened, and I was like, I wouldn't be shocked if the Democrats or the objectors will file an appeal. If this comes down to, hey, and I looked up some case law, and you're right, at the appellate court decision, there's some cases and some evidence that was heard that provoked the electoral board to say, we're going to keep these people on the ballot because it's just a small election and the petitions are small and people make mistakes. And I think that was even said in the actual hearing itself. Hey, people make mistakes. They're human.
Right. And again, you can see perhaps why someone would appeal this, because not every appellate court might have turned over those, but there were enough for us to make our decision. And so the other side might say, well, there were other instances where they didn't. We believe in this, so we're going to move forward.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's going to be fun. I love it when when elections get all competitive and whatnot. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Come back after the break. County board districts are so important. This election is going to be so much fun. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. The June 28th primary, that's happening. And then we'll have an election for our county board. And in studio with me, we have Vicki Schultz, and she's running in what district again? 8. And what does that kind of encompass, District 8?
It encompasses Market and Lee and over on Bell and Clinton and
Yeah, and I know that there was some remapping, and they're actually considering redoing the ward maps in the city of Bloomington. And I was kind of curious on the lines, and they did this whole red, white, blue initiative. The county board did. John McIntyre headed that, and he's running in County Board District 5. But I wanted to kind of gauge, your background, right? Where you're from and why you decided to run. So, Vicki, why did you decide to run, and who are you? And when we see your name on the ballot, what should we think?
I decided to run because I wanted to get involved after just paying attention to some of the political climate over the past 7-8 years. I just decided that I wanted to be a part of what was happening because I felt like it was historical. But not only that, just because it's going to affect our grandchildren and our future generations. And, I have a granddaughter, and I wanted to, there were a lot of things I saw. I didn't like the way it was going, and I said, what do they say? They always say, if you're going to complain, just don't sit back, get up and do something. So I decided to get up and do something.
Yeah, no, I know, and I struggle with it all of the time. So I've always really wanted to run. I don't know if I ever will for something, right? But there's a whole thing, FCC, and you can't really run and campaign at the same time as being on air. So I have to come to that decision if I want to be on air or if I want to run, and it can't be both. But I do get it, right? Because it's like you want to do something so bad, and it's that burden that you have for society. And when you look at younger people, and I'm young, I'm not old, right? I'm 22, but I see kids, right, in the community playing basketball, or I'll talk to them, or they'll send me things that are happening, and that's when I started to really open up, and my eyes were really opened when these high schoolers, when I started doing news stories about the school board, about people speaking at the school board, and I was like, okay, I'll show up to these board meetings, write a story about public comment, things of that nature. I started getting texts from students, kids, high school students, about things that they were experiencing in the school and how they didn't like it. So contrary to popular belief, right, these kids really are awake to the idea of this not being of a good moral standing. There's something there within kids who think that this is bad, that there's something going on that they don't agree with.
It's an upheaval of our environment. And again, the kids are affected by it. And I'm passionate about it. I have a long history, and so I have a history. I've I was abused when I was younger, when I was a little girl, and I'm very passionate about seeing that kids are not, that we have a good, compassionate, loving environment for our children. I'm very passionate about that. I want a safe environment for our kids, and I work, and in the where I work, I work with a lot of younger people, and I'm very passionate about having that environment safe and enjoyable for them, and that's my biggest concern, is that when I see things like this upheaval that goes on, I see that, it's discerning to the kids. And then you see these studies that are done where you see these kids there's a lot of mental health issues now because our kids are struggling. And with what's going on in our environment and with
well, and I think that Chuck Erickson was one of the only county board members who who pushed for the county to open up and for government buildings and things. And we were talking a little bit about what a county board member actually does. So,
right. Well, and that's a lot different than what is going on. And some of the things that I'm interested, not that I'm interested in, but my main concerns are safety, community, and trust. And public safety is a big concern. Strengthening our communities and honoring our voters' trust.
Yeah, yes, and honoring our voters' trust. I love that, because that is actually something that stems from the county board, because the county board oversees the McLean County Clerk's office. Not to say that our clerk doesn't do a great job. I think she does a great job.
Oh, she does a fabulous.
But there's things that you can do to make it better as a county board, and you can allot money and you work with a budget, right? And budget out things that are for specific departments, right? The McLean County Health Department, and I know people over at the McLean County Health Department, but I'm just going to say it, right? Look, you did a disservice. You had a chance to actually address the COVID-19 pandemic, and they did a disservice to this community by not, if there's something within state Illinois statute or law that says any kind of pandemic or disease, anything, like even if you had malaria, their quarantine laws and the way you quarantine all goes through the McLean County Health Department, but you have to get specific things from court, fight that out in order to quarantine somebody, right? And they were placing quarantines on people, and then all of a sudden the McLean County Health Department was saying, we don't deal with the quarantines, the schools deal with the quarantines. We're talking about kids, we're talking about schools. The one thing that led to a whole lot of mental health issues was the McLean County Board, or the McLean County Health Department, quarantining kids illegally. It was illegal because they couldn't have done that without a court document and taking them to court and saying that they had this disease, and then fighting it out in court, and then going from there.
Exactly. And it's also just the difficulties that came about by shutting down businesses and small businesses, and just putting a constraint on our whole community with this. And you brought up public safety. Another one of those departments that you oversee as a county board member is the sheriff's office. And the sheriff's office, and just for a little bit of context here, I'll read a little bit about what the county board is going to be facing come the next couple of weeks here. The McLean County board members, they're going to have to vote next week. So this Thursday, they're going to have to vote for contracts for the sheriff's department to obtain these body-worn cameras and new tasers. They get new tasers. The county would have to spend nearly $328,000 for 53 body cameras on a 5-year contract. So they have to have these body cameras. It's on a 5-year contract, and then they look over and then they order more if that 5-year contract says when they readdress that 5 years from now. A state law, so that is actually the Safety Act, mandates that all these police agencies have to equip themselves with these cameras, right? And I can already hear the left screeching, Vicki, about how these body cameras are going to be so much money. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, back up. You're the reason why we have these body cameras, because guess what? The state law that your state legislators drafted up and tried to defang our police officers, they drafted this up, and McLean County has to have these body cameras by January 1st of 2023. Yeah. And they have to be equipped. And I just feel like that's distrustful of our sheriff's office to even require them. But I mean, I don't know, Vicki, we were talking a little bit more money. It has to be allotted to the sheriff's department, because that's our safety. That's our public safety. One thing you don't want to cheap out on, public safety. Right. I don't want to cheap out on public safety at all, because these officers go out, and for the majority of them, and then every occupation, you're going to have problems with some bad apples. I mean, that's just life. That's the way it is. But, there are lots of police officers out there that are out there working hard, keeping our public safe, day in, day out. They're working hard, and these laws are coming down from the state, and we have to go with them. I mean, they're going to need the body cameras.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to supply them, and maybe what we can work in is some sort of pay raises.
Yeah, it's nice that you bring that up, because I was actually talking to some deputies, and they had said that they're facing a big issue when it comes to pay incentives and actually getting deputies to stay in sheriff's departments, because even down the street at Bloomington Police Department, they actually offer their police officers more, if I'm not mistaken. And the sheriff's department, what incentivizes those deputies to stay there when they can go down the road and go get more at the Bloomington Police Department? Nothing. So it's like you have to do something in order to get this county back on track and to get those deputies, because those deputies are the ones who actually go to rural areas, right? So I know we've got a lot of rural listeners, and I've got to look up your district in the map, but there are some rural areas in District 8, right?
Yes, I believe so. I think the majority of District 8 is in the city. I haven't gotten a good idea of the new map yet. But
Yeah. Well, there's some rural areas, and there's some places where Bloomington isn't called out to that area in District 8. I know District 2 is all rural, and there's no way a Bloomington police officer is going to go out there, and it's not their jurisdiction, right? So it's like, when you call, is an officer going to show up? That's where we're at right now, because we're not paying them nearly as much, and there's more pay incentives out there in bigger departments.
Yeah, and I think we need to sit down and really figure out a way in which we can incentivize police officers to want to stay in our community.
And Vicki, before we go, well, we're coming up on a break. When we come back, we're going to get into your background a little bit, who you are as a person, your granddaughter. You obviously have children. I would love to lighten it up a little bit here on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Jesus is my best friend. You heard it here, Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. And we were just talking off air, and that's what Vicki Schultz just told me. She goes, Jesus is my best friend. So we're going to talk to Vicki a little bit about her. And she goes to church. And Vicki, where do you go to church at? And how long have you been going? And what really has been your testimony up to this point? And I think that's important, because your testimony is a testament to what you've gone through, right? Testimony, what tests you've gone through in life. And when you have a testimony to share, and when you have, hey, this is what I went through, but this is how I came out of it, it shows your character, and your character, believe it or not, is going to be on that ballot. And I don't care what anybody says, it's true. Your character has to be in check. And one of the things for me, at least, is that I have somebody on the ballot that is a follower of Christ. So tell me a little bit about your church life.
Okay. All right. Well, I think from the time I was little, I had Jesus with me somehow. I didn't always follow him, though. I didn't follow him. He was always with me, but I went astray. And I went to, I can't fully say it was like self-will that got me to go astray. There were things outside of myself that happened and occurred that caused me to lose myself and whatever. But I did come back to Jesus, and I rely on him totally every day. I rely on him. I walk with him. I joined the Catholic Church in 2018, which was a total shock to me, because I had been looking for a church for years and years, and I never really found anything where I felt like I belonged. And I think it's different for everybody. I think that we each individually have to find that spiritual connection that brings us to where we are. But I believe what it is that I don't hold myself in the right moral frame. I believe without Jesus, I can't do that. And I think it's different for everybody, but I believe we all need something spiritual to hold us in the correct moral frame so we can live our lives. Because on our own,
make moral sound decisions.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about here. Vicki, where are you running? What are you running for?
I'm running for County Board, District 8.
County Board District 8, you heard it here. It's Vicki Schultz. She's running for County Board District 8, and we're talking her journey, and she went to Epiphany Church in 2018. So I totally agree with you. Moral standing starts with your spirituality, and it is different for everybody, right? And I went to church at I kind of called myself a church mutt. I haven't really had a denomination. I grew up kind of Nazarene, Lutheran. I went to a couple of Lutheran. Now I'm at a non-denominational church. I go to the Tabernacle with Pastor Tim Farrell. You became a Catholic. So were you a Catholic before?
No, I was not a Catholic before, but and I didn't know. It was really kind of strange how I ended up becoming a Catholic, but I was sharing my religious beliefs.
The news and talk of Bloomington Normal, Cities 92.9.
It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. The Democrat Party, they decided to contest petitions for some odd reason, and at least 5 of the county board members were contested, despite 2 Democrat candidates actually having the same exact failures when it came to numbering petitions. So they got you on a technicality. In studio with me, I've got Vicki Schultz. She's running for County Board District 8. And then over there across the way, it's Hannah Blumenshine, and she's running in District 5. I know, so many districts, and all of the county board seats, I think, are up pretty much. It's a lot of county board positions are up for grabs at this point, which we're going to get into why you guys wanted to run. But first, I wanted to address this petition issue where they contested your petitions. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that should have happened from the Democrat Party? Because I kind of have a position of, well, if they can do it, they could do it because it's just playing politics. But is it an issue with voters' choice? And was that not fair?
I really don't think that it was a problem with voters' choice because it was a technicality. It was a numbering of the pages. Mm-hmm. I'm new at this. I've never done this before. And I got motivated to run because of just everything that's happening. And I wanted to get involved to represent the voters. And I went out on a walk. I walked and I got my signatures on my petitions from the voters. I was really excited about it. And since I was new, that was one thing that I missed on was numbering the pages. I didn't know we were supposed to do that. And it was a mistake on my part. But it wasn't intentional. It was not intentional at all. And and I feel like because I was going door to door and I got the signatures in my district and the people were saying, yeah, we'll have you put on the ballot, then I thought that's all that was really important. Mm-hmm. And they were coming out and saying, and I only had 6 pages, so it wasn't fraudulent or trying to do anything.
Illegal. You not numbering your petitions wasn't done in some sort of malice, right? It wasn't like you were trying to be shady with it at all. It was just like, hey, I'm new to this and I didn't number my petitions, and this is a minor technicality that I feel is kind of unfair because I took the time to go out there door to door and go talk to the voters face to face. And when I say voters' choice, is it something that was a disservice to the voters and kind of a slap in their face when it came to them contesting? I mean, the Democrats have to realize these people are your neighbors. You're going door to door, and these people said, I want to be on the petition. Hannah, what do you think about that? And do you think that it was just playing politics, right? It's okay. To me, I come at it and I'm like, well, they're just being competitive.
Well, there was no question of voter confusion. There was no question of fraud. There was no question of any voters in our county district having concern if, there was fraud or voter confusion. It was clearly petty partisan politics, not bipartisanship at all. My whole point in this is that if they were actually following the rules, those Democrat petitions on the other side that were not numbered as well, would have been contested. It was Marsha Bima in District 9 and Julie Hahn in District 1. And Marsha Beeman, didn't even write on her petition what district she was running for, and they considered that a valid petition. So my question is, if we're going for rule following,
Right.
it has to be equal on the same side.
Well, and did the party, and I don't know who could have, and did you guys kind of fall short when it came to, and it's not to, place blame or anything. You guys are new to this, right? And you're both running and you're not incumbents. You've never filed a petition before, correct? And you're new to it. Do you think that, the next go around, say you get into office, the next go around, are you going to look at these Democrat petitions next time around and look for the shortfalls in it? Or is that just not in your moral character? And to me, if I was running, I'd be like, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull every single Democratic petition and I'm going to check them. And if they have a T not crossed, I will bring it up. And that's just me personally. And I know that's kind of sassy and kind of unethical in a sense, but I'm tired of it and I'm sick of it. And I'm at the point where I would throw eggs at my, but I'm not running, right? And it doesn't matter, but I would throw eggs at the person's house. If I was running, I would throw eggs at my opponent's house. That's how petty I am.
My whole part in, not wanting to do that next time I run is because I'm running to represent District 5 and the voters in District 5. If I were to be playing this partisan game that the Democrats decided to play this time, what is that doing for my voters? It's hurting them.
See,
it's not giving them a choice.
That's why I'm not on the ballot. Yeah. That's why I'm not on the ballot. I am not mean, but I am, I get sassy and I don't play with it. And I get so upset when Democrats do this kind of thing. So just the full name of the Democrat objectors, because we do names here on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. It's conservative Ken. Jill Blair, Shana Wachinski, Ana Darrow, Kara McMorris, Sarah Breeden. Those are the full names of the objectors. And one thing I did want to ask you guys as well, and Vicki, what do you think about the McLean County Clerk's office? Now, I'm going to read a quote from Kathy Michael. I think she is a great county clerk, and she's she's nice. And she has always tried to educate people, and she sent me this guide that they give candidates when they had, and honestly, I don't think it's her fault. I think it's the state of Illinois. That guide is just garbage, period.
Well, I can tell you
like
the packet so there were two packets. There's the Illinois State Board of Elections packet for county board members, which is not the one that you click on when you go onto the McLean County Clerk site for the elections. McLean County has their own separate
guide. Do that.
There's two. The one that we received states nowhere, except for if you were to want to look up the statutes on how to file, here's the website. Nowhere does it say in print that the statute, I think it's 4/10, in the election rules that the numbers needs to be numbered. Nowhere in the McLean County packet. Now in the Illinois packet for county boards, yes, it does. But that is not what we receive.
But you received two different ones, for sure.
We receive, There's McLean County, and then there's the Illinois State Board of Elections.
Right. And the county board, you guys oversee the departments, right? So that's the McLean County Health Department. That's the McLean County Clerk's Office. That's the Sheriff's Office. There's a lot of things you do at that county board level. Do you think that there has to be something done at the county clerk's office in order to make this easier and to make it more apparent that you have to number your petitions, or say another statute? I don't know. I haven't really read through all of the packet, but there's things that you have to abide by. Should there be maybe a training class dedicated to it, or should there be something online that you watch? I don't know.
Maybe to add in the rules as something that was left out that might be added in.
Yeah, but even simpler than that, and Vicki can, remember this. When you file your petitions, there's a checklist.
Oh, is
They
there?
check. Have you signed every page? Is there a zip code in every line?
And when you go to file, somebody sits
check,
down with
check,
you and they
right?
do a checklist.
Yes. So why isn't pages numbered? I think that opens the gate to this petty politics that we're having.
Exactly.
I think this is and this is nothing against the clerk's office. I just think it needs, what I've learned is I'm so glad that I've had this experience, because all politics should be for a beginner is learning.
Yeah.
It should be a lesson. I'd rather learn and be vulnerable than know and manipulate. And that's exactly what happened. They knew that people weren't going to be able to number. They didn't get us on anything else. That's the whole reason this thing was overruled, because they just did numbering.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, wait, at your first hearing, and Vicki, I'm kind of curious, at your first hearing, what was that like? How did that kind of happen? And when you sat down, did you guys have like opening arguments, closing arguments? Did you
It
get to
was
speak at the hearing?
fascinating. I thought it was fascinating. I really enjoyed just showing up there and just going through that process of learning what the possibilities are. But I think too, and Hannah's right, I think that it's a learning lesson, and I think that there are things that can be learned from what occurred, and we can make those changes so for the better. So this doesn't.
But
we don't
that doesn't
put
make
ourselves in
us
this
that-
situation again.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it. This being a learning situation does not mean that our petitions were invalid.
Oh yeah.
And why I say that is because one of the panel's closing arguments specifically state we're all human. These things happen.
Yeah. And
But to remove us off the ballot
Is doing
was
what good?
extreme.
Yeah.
Was extreme, and it also is not doing service.
And
to
you
the
guys aren't going to
voters.
be on. You aren't going to not be on the ballot, because in the second hearing, Hannah, they said that you're going to be on the ballot, and they basically said, "Yeah, nice try, Dems."
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, and it was a cool. So the first hearing was for the first four, because the fifth person, Annette Fellows, was currently out of town. So the second hearing was for her specifically, and then they did the deliberations. This is the only panel in Illinois that has to deliberate in public. Every other panel, every other board is behind closed doors. So we got to hear their deliberations and their arguments out loud. So it was really cool to see, because we were seeing this live, right? Their thoughts, their processes. But also, the people who challenged us were hearing the thoughts and the ideas and why they were wrong in live time. And there was no emotions behind it, right? It was all factual.
Yeah.
And I think it was hard for some people in the room to grasp.
Yeah. Hey, we're coming up on a break. It's Conservative Cat, Cities 92.9. We're going to come back and we're going to talk to Vicki a little bit more about her run, and come back after the break, more about the county board. Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, and with me I have Bruce Goodmanson. Did I say that right? Yes, Bruce
Absolutely,
Goodmanson.
Kat.
And he is a best-selling author of this amazing book. I've read a synopsis of it, and I'm hoping to get mine in the mail. It's 100% Success Without College. And it kind of goes into saving children from the Marxist education that they get in college. So for decades, the American people have been sold on the lie that our children need a college education in order to succeed in life. And I was definitely sold on that lie. And I come back now and I'm like, I really didn't even need this higher education of complete and utter Marxism. And I didn't really learn a whole lot about my actual skill that I use now through the higher education system. Now, that goes without saying. I did have some internships that I was extremely grateful for, but that wasn't my higher ed. And Bruce, why would you write something like this? And what provoked you into writing 100% success without college?
Kat, I worked for a bankruptcy law firm a few years ago, and I was the one that spoke with all of our clients who came through the door. And this young lady came in, and she was so happy with life because she was going to bankrupt on her $220,000 student loan. But what she didn't realize was that you cannot legally ever bankrupt on a student loan. And when I explained this to her, her countenance just dropped. It was horrible to see how sad she was because she owed $220,000. And get this, she was trained to be a high school guidance counselor. And in all of her training, nobody bothered to tell her that you can't bankrupt on a student loan. It was horrible. And even more, we did the math, and she was going to start at $42,000 a year here in Arizona as a guidance counselor. Well, she couldn't afford to be one because her student loan payment was going to be $2,400 a month. So she was utterly destroyed. I wrote a white paper because of this about the evil of our student debt. And from that, I thought, well, there's got to be other opportunities outside of college that a young man or a young woman could apply themselves to earn a great living. And sure enough, there were an army of opportunities. So I did all the research, and I went into a variety of fields such as sales, entrepreneuring, trade schools, vocational, apprenticeships, cyber boot camps. I went into all the world of career training opportunities outside of college. In a sense, the book would serve as an encyclopedia of all these opportunities. But I realized that college, people are surprised to hear me say this, but college is of no value to 85% of our nation's workforce. 85%. And even more, out of 100 students who are accepted into college, 50 of them are going to drop out. In fact, we now lead the world in college dropouts. And of the remaining 50 students who do graduate, 30 of them will end up in jobs they could have gotten straight out of high school. And note this, there are roughly 30,000 occupations to choose from, yet the typical university offers roughly 85 majors. That's it. Just 85 careers to choose from at a university out of 30,000. So they limit their kids to just a handful of occupations. And I say to parents, this is dead wrong.
Yeah.
It's just awful. Even more, 36% of our college students will not demonstrate any significant improvement in learning or in skills over 4 years of college. This means that a third of our college graduates will be no better off or better prepared or better skilled than the day when they stepped on campus as a freshman. What a waste of life and tuition.
It is. It is a waste of life and tuition. I know I spent a lot of money, and all I can really remember from my days at college were writing paper after paper about cultural issues surrounding things like Marxism. I remember writing a paper. I think I wrote a 20-page paper on Marxism and why it's a good thing. Literally, that was the topic. Like, hey, how is Marxism a good thing? And that was the prompt. And I wrote 20 pages on that. Where in life am I ever going to use that? And you spoke about how these majors, right? There's all kinds of these majors, but they don't translate to the actual occupational world. And I'm going to read this real quick, the statistic. There is more than $1.5 trillion of student loan debt in the United States. This debt is owed by 44.5 million people across all demographics. 2 million of those people owe more than $100,000. And 0.5 million of them have a loan of more than $200,000. In 2017, $100.6 billion was borrowed. That is down, however, from the peak of $125.6 billion in 2010. Tuition costs, they just continue to rise, and these statistics are extremely alarming considering what you're getting out of it.
Oh, and that's the point of it. Matter of fact, the Harvard Business Review reported that 53% of college graduates did not apply to an entry-level job in their field of study because they felt unqualified. So here these kids are paying, on an average well, 44. When you talk about the 44 million, the average student loan debt is $37,500.
Yeah.
So they spend all this debt, and yet they know that they're not qualified because they realize they don't have the required skills that are listed in job descriptions. So again, I'm trying to say, mom and dad, move away. Look at all the opportunities that are out there. You got trade schools, blue and white collar apprenticeships, cyber boot camps, entrepreneuring, sales. The stories that I have about entrepreneuring and sales are just delightful in the book. It just wakes your minds up, and this is the purpose of 100% success without college. It's to wake your mind up to the opportunities, because here's the point, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
How can your young adult fall in love with a career if they don't know that the career exists? I mean, maybe you have a son that loves baseball, eats and drinks and dies for baseball, but he can't play the game professionally because he's not good enough. However, he can still remain a part of the game if he becomes a professional baseball umpire. But if he doesn't know the training exists, he can't become one. Do you see where I'm walking
yes,
down?
I see where you're taking this, and it's like that's a perfect analogy, because these colleges don't even show you that these positions do exist. So I'm actually translating into my job here. Well, okay, so Cities 92 Point, I went to school for journalism, right? And I made some really good networking. I would say that the networking, but this was all through my internship, right? If I didn't have those internships, then I wouldn't have made that networking that landed me this position here, where I, talked to people in the industry, and I made myself, a very valuable asset later on. But I didn't know about the internships that this specific radio station had offered. If I had just gotten into like a small paid internship here and worked my way up, then I would have been able to have that position. Right. But it was just kind of, I fell into one of those categories because of the internship. My higher education did nothing. When I say nothing, it did nothing for me. And they never said anything. And I went to Illinois State University, and they never said anything about this. The only person who did was the faculty advisor that I had at the internship. And they never said anything about this position, right? So it's kind of interesting how that whole sense of entrepreneurship has died, right? You don't start in a company because you have to go to college first and get that degree, and that makes you more marketable. But it doesn't, because you could start out in that company and avoid that marketable degree, because that company, I mean, especially right now, people are hurting for people. Employers need people, and these occupations out there. So can you give me like an example of an occupation that maybe that's out there that a college doesn't really bring light to?
That a college does what, Kat?
That a college completely just ignores and doesn't tell you about, like an occupation, like one of these white collar, blue collar positions.
Oh, they're all over the place. For example, I talked to a young man who was a high school graduate, had no college degree whatsoever. And he was working as a service advisor at a BMW dealership. And I said, tell me your story. And he said, well, I first started off by washing cars. He was just a car washer. And then he was moved to the tire department. And then he was moved to another department. And then they asked him to become a service advisor, earning $68,000 a year. I've got a story of a young man who was an apprentice for plumbing. Mm-hmm. And he worked with this company for about 5 years. And at that time, he was about 23 years old. He's a friend of my wife. He set out on his own. And now at the early age of about 32, he's now a millionaire just doing plumbing. Mm-hmm. You could go, let me tell you this quick story of a sales and entrepreneuring, for example. Here's this young man, high school dropout. He goes to the Pacific Northwest to sell long johns to lumberjacks, makes about $1,500, moves himself to Washington, D.C., borrows another $1,500 to buy an A&W root beer franchise. Well, then he buys another franchise, and then another. And then after 20 years, he decides to buy a hotel. And then he buys another, and then another. And the name of this Long John salesman, this high school dropout, is John Marriott of the Marriott Hotels.
Wow.
So here he is. He was an underwear salesman, Kat.
Yeah.
It's not a very dignified profession, but he learned from it. He grew from it, and he built an empire. And this is the power of this book. Why build these little small things where you're working as a Starbucks barista with a PhD when you can be building empires?
Yes, yes. Every person I've ever talked to that graduated college, they say, well, I just can't find a job out there. I just don't know if and like you said, I don't know if I have the skill set to apply for this entry-level position. Actually, the position that I applied for had nothing to do with my journalism degree at all. And it was a position, a radio position, right? And eventually I just kind of got into radio show host and things like that. And I mean, obviously I do journalism on a day-to-day basis, right? Reading, writing, interviewing, and things like that. That's all journalism stuff. My degree kind of translates, but there's a lot of people out there where their degree does not translate. And I don't know how something like gender studies even translates into the real world on a real world scale.
Where are you going to go?
Where are you going to go? What are you going to do?
Except back onto the university to teach the same stuff.
Yes.
Think on this, Kat. Every trade school or apprenticeship program provides its students a job skill upon graduation. Every single one of them. But college majors can't come close to making the same claim. I can think of maybe only around 10 to 15 college degrees that will provide a student with real marketable job skills. That's it. That's the big lie that people don't understand.
Yes.
Other than the larger lie, which basically these professors have become thought police on campus, and then when your kids come out of college, all that they have is a loss of faith,
yes,
a loss of love for their country, a mountain of debt, and absolutely no skills to keep themselves marketable.
I know. Believe me, I know. And these professors are the root cause of it because they want to keep that culture going, right? Because the only job you'll ever get in a gender studies major or gender studies role is, of course, teaching that same subject at that university. So they got to keep this culture going, right? And the only way they do that is to make you so unmarketable where you have to come back and get a PhD in that and then spend more money and then become a professor yourself. It's absolutely disgusting. But we're pushing up against a break. Real quick, Bruce, tell us a bit about your book and where we can get it and a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, Kat. You can get the book at anythingbutcollege.com. Anythingbutcollege.com. The book is called 100% Success Without College. It has two sections. The first section talks about the demise of our nation's education from preschool through through high school and college. And then the second section is what I call the land of milk and honey, which goes into all the opportunities out there. And basically a little bit about me. I was allowed to take the master's program of instructional science as an undergraduate degree because this is what I love, the science of training. And this is what I've been doing quite a bit. And I used that skill to create this book, which, by the way, it reads more like a wicked crime novel. It's not a dull textbook. It's just a very fiery book that just will excite you to understand what's happening in our education system and how you can avoid it. And I'm going to say right off the bat, mom and dad, if you got a son or daughter in the public education system, which we might talk about after the break, I advise you to get them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll be back and we'll talk about the public education system next. It's Bruce, and you can get his book at anythingbutcollege.com. Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And with me, I have Bruce Goodmanson. He is a best-selling author of 100% Success Without College, and it provides crucial information and offers incredible advice for patriots considering higher education. Now, before we took the break, we were talking a lot about college and higher education and how that is just a complete mess when it comes to student loan debt and what their end goal is, and that is to keep you in this culture and this system that just makes you faithless and honestly makes you hate yourself. I will say, but higher education made me hate myself because I had to get out of it because I lost faith, and I thought that and I'm glad that I found this position here at Cities 92.9 because they're of like mind, and it was just a terrible environment. But another terrible environment is K through 12, right? Amping yourself up to college. Tell us a little bit about how your book 100% Success Without College, how that addresses public education at the lower education level.
Well, Kat, your parents need to understand that bad colleges start with a bad public education system, and ours is terrible. Compared to the students of other nations, our students are academically ranked 26th internationally. 26. We spend more per pupil for their education than all other nations, except for maybe one other nation. China's students are ranked number 1, yet they spend half as much as what we do. And the current nation's report card declared that 71% of our high school graduates are not proficient in reading, writing, math, science, and U.S. history. So there is a lot of damage that is happening to our kids, and this is what the first part of the book is explaining about. It's saying, Mom and Dad, you need to wake up. And I explain to them, I say, there are only 2 objectives for an elementary education. Just 2, not 5, not 20, just 2, that we ensure that upon a K through 12 education, that a child is self-governing and self-reliant. And what I mean by self-governing is that basically they do unto others as they would have done unto themselves, that they are basically good citizens. And 2, self-reliant is that they have the ability to be financially responsible and to use their money wisely. That's the whole objective of an education. And to achieve those objectives, you need to have basically 5 abilities. The ability to read well, write well, speak well, think well, and do math well. That's the responsibility of an elementary, junior high school education, to give those skills and those skills only, that our kids master those. Because when they master them, they are free. They are free to determine themselves, because Jefferson basically said that a nation cannot be both free and ignorant. And that's pretty powerful. That says it so quickly, because if your kids come out ignorant, then there are going to be the powers to be that will take away the freedoms. And this is the purpose of an elementary education right now. You've got teachers that, even in Ron DeSantis, as the mayor of Florida, have created this law that basically you're not supposed to talk about gender or CTR and so forth. They've got recordings now of teachers saying, well, we're circumventing these things. We're just retitling CTR or gender studies or so forth to some other title, making it public health or something like that. They are fighting for this, and you have to ask yourself, why? Why would they want to basically abuse our children in school? Why? Well, they're just child abusers.
Yeah, they are. They're child abusers. And what I have a problem with is these teachers who sit on their hands and then they know that it's wrong, but yet they aren't willing to stand up to these administrators who receive big checks. I'm talking like $235,000. I mean, that's what's just one of these administrators, and then they create these things. Actually, at Unit 5, which is a school district here, I had received a few messages from listeners where they had said that there was a panel of drag queens that came to the school for high schoolers, and they were questioning these drag queens and putting these drag queens on a panel for these high schoolers to ask questions. And what's the reason? I don't understand why you would use a drag queen. What does that have to offer a high school student? I'm really trying to wrap my brain around it. Like, you could have chosen an astronaut, you could have chose a panel of scientists, you could have chosen a panel of, doctors or something like that. Somebody with a education, somebody that could actually steer these children into a direction of, hey, maybe I would want to go do this occupation. No, you'd rather have a panel of drag queens come, because then that stirs up the conversation of gender identity and gender studies, right? Which the only place, and we talked about it in our first segment, is in college, right? The only place you will ever talk about these societal issues is in college. That's it. You get out there in the real workforce, that's not the case, right? You're a big CEO of some company. You're not, unless you're talking about diversity quotas, you're not concerned about the day-to-day of, I wonder what my gender identity is, and I wonder what their gender identity is. You're not concerned about that. You're concerned about numbers. You're concerned about how do we increase profits of this company? How do we push out our product? That's basically what the American work or job is. How do we push out our work or our product or service or what we offer to the community at a rate that is acceptable to our consumer, right? And that's the basis of American work, right? We go provide, and we get compensation for that work, and then we go home, and then we do it all over again, 9 to 5. But how does a drag queen and their philosophical view about where their gender is and what the scale of gender fluidity is, how does that translate into that core ideology of basic capitalism? It doesn't.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. Matter of fact, it's there to destroy the concept, the power, the tradition of the American family. That's the only single reason. And so they put these drag queens down there to basically confuse our kids where they don't know what is normal and what isn't. And when you spoke of Marxism earlier, this is what Marxists did. He destroyed the basic family unit. That's how you gain control, because when the family unit is destroyed, there is a world of confusion. And when you have a world of confusion, those that are governing, they have a principal objective. They are not confused. And so they're able to take control over a whole people. This is exactly what Hitler did.
Yes, yes. And what people don't tell these kids, right, when they're teaching this Marxist ideology and when they're teaching these kind of ideologies, is how Karl Marx was actually a really sad guy. I mean, killed himself. His family killed himself. He ate himself to death practically. He had like boils all over his skin. He was not happy. And neither was Hillary. Hitler killed himself too. So it's like this. Why in the world are you not telling these kids that this authoritarian communism type government, where government is, hands out everything and college hands out everything like it always does? Why are you not telling these kids that this is always bad? Socialism never works. Communism never works. Marxism never worked, right? And they don't tell them the end solution, the end outcome of what this ideology has in store for them. And that is irresponsible. But real quick, Bruce, we're pushing up against a break, and it was a pleasure having you on the show. But tell us how we can get your book. We're talking to Bruce, and he's a best-selling author of this awesome book. It's called 100% Success Without College. Bruce Goodmanson. Bruce, how do we get your book?
Again, go to anythingbutcollege.com. Anythingbutcollege.com. It's a wonderful website. It provides you chapter headings, quotes from the book, and it's got a cute video to watch. And Kat, I just thank you, and I appreciate your time and for allowing me to come on and to be a part of your audience.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm going to be praying for your cause, and hopefully with people like Bruce and, people I talk to out in the community, hopefully we can start to change things for our kids, because it's important.
Absolutely.
You have a great
thank you.
You have a great day. Bye-bye, Bruce.
Thank you, Kat. Bye-bye now.
It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And in studio with me, I have Dennis Tipsword, and he is running as state representative in the 105th district. Now, that includes a little bit of Normal. There is like a rural part. He's from Woodford County, and he is actually the deputy in Woodford County. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kat. Thanks for having me. Glad to spend some time with you this afternoon.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about your position right now. So you're second in command to the sheriff, correct?
Right. I'm the chief deputy at the Woodford County Sheriff's Office, and just the hierarchy of a sheriff's office, the chief deputy is second in command. He answers directly to the sheriff, and then everything else in the department is within my span of control. So then under me, it would branch off to the jail side of our sheriff's office, and then the other way would branch off to the road patrol side of our office, which is the squad cars you see on the street. So, and then there's a command staff layer in each of those divisions as well.
Now, why run? Why run? Was it COVID-19? There's a whole plethora of things. And I know we were talking a little bit off air about the SAFE-T Act. And I wanted to talk a lot about that in our next segment. But COVID-19 mandates, how did that kind of affect Woodford County and your position? And did you have to enforce these kind of ridiculous mandates? And how did you feel about that?
No. First of all, we did not enforce them. So our sheriff was clear from the beginning that we would not get involved in going into businesses and looking for mask restrictions and things like that. So we did not get involved with that. But obviously COVID affected us greatly. We had, we saw a lot of, it's hard to put your finger on it, but we saw a lot of a more increased level of folks kind of not getting along with each other. I think maybe they were frustrated because they were locked down. All these, the overreach of the governor in so many positions just kind of put people on edge. So, our deputies had a harder time dealing with folks because everybody was stressed out. Everybody, felt that this was kind of the wrong approach, and we were left to deal with those pieces. So yeah, it was a struggle, that's for sure.
And you were talking with me a little bit about how the state's attorney in Woodford County is, conservative, and did that have so how does the state's attorney kind of work with the sheriff's office and keep things in line in regards to COVID-19 mandates?
Well, I don't really think that the state's attorney has a lot to do with the COVID-19 mandate, so to speak. He's the chief law enforcement officer in the county, so he's the one who ultimately decides what cases are prosecuted. We as the sheriff's office bring cases or complaints to him, and then he decides if they go on to court or not. But as far as the COVID portion of this, he didn't really have much impact in that at all.
So COVID-19, it's pushing you to run. Is there something mulling over in your mind that you want to bring forward to the table as soon as, say, day one state representative? Would you bring something forward to kind of ensure that didn't happen?
Well, I think we have to do everything we can to curtail the governor's executive privilege. I think that was the big takeaway from all of this. How one person can, just month after month after month, reinstitute his executive order that puts all this on us as citizens. Really, with going around the legislature, the General Assembly had nothing to do with that. He went around them, and I think that's something that we have to look at as legislators, that executive orders absolutely have their place in our government, because there are times when we can't convene the General Assembly to work through those things. But in this situation, this was a huge overreach, in my opinion, and we've got to keep government in check, and yeah, that's one of the big reasons why I'm running, because I just kind of saw this as a runaway overreach on the governor's part.
And it all kind of interplays with each other, because you've got the executive branch, which is you guys, you're a deputy, and you have that executive, and you have or law enforcement, right? You have to enforce the laws, and then you have Governor J.B. Pritzker, then you have the legislature, and then you have the judicial side, which is the state's attorney. So they all kind of work together. Now, before we get into the Safety Act, because I know you have a lot to say about I don't really like the Safety Act. I think that it kind of defangs, I guess is the word I use, police officers, law enforcement, and that's just my overall consensus of it.
Right.
But I wanted to get into your background and who you are as a person. So who is Dennis Tipsworth?
Awesome.
He's running as 105th District State Representative.
Outstanding, thank you. So I'm Woodford County born and raised. I grew up over on the west side of Woodford County in the Spring Bay area. I went to Metamora Township High School, graduated from there, went on to Western Illinois University, where I achieved my Bachelor's of Science degree, and I met my wife while we were there. We've been married 28 years. We've got 3 grown kids and 3 grandkids now. And I've been a police officer, like I said, for 28 years. So, I'm
thank you, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot, and I'm happy to say that in Woodford County, we get that a lot. We really do get a lot of folks, while you're pumping gas or doing whatever you're doing, just stop and say thank you. And it seems small, but it does mean a lot to us, especially in the world we're kind of living in now. But yeah, so I've lived in this district, lived in Woodford County my whole life. Woodford County is, makes up a large part of the district, and so I'm local. I've been here my whole life.
Well, like I said, thank you so much, and I want to actually start here, and I think this is a good segue. In this Safety Act, there's these annual like evaluation. It's a mandate that officers have to go through. Yep. And what is because that kind of sounds to me tyrannical, right? You're forcing police officers to go in and have a mental health evaluation.
Right.
And I don't like that for anybody, because mental health is something that's, individualized for everybody. And if you try to overreach and mandate somebody to go to a mental health evaluation, one, I think it's going to cause officers to not take it seriously. It's just going to be
Absolutely.
one of those things that you're like, oh, I have to go do my mental health evaluation, and they're not going to take it seriously. And the first step to actually getting help mentally would be to
Open up. And they're not going to open
realize
up.
yourself
Right.
that you want to seek out that help,
Yep,
right?
Absolutely. So part of this bill, there is that. It's an annual psychological evaluation. And we in the profession agree mental health is important for us to keep our eye on, right? Because there's no doubt this job changes us over your career. The things we see, the things we have to do on a daily basis, and as that builds up year after year after year, it changes us. There's no two ways about that. It's fact. But to mandate that I have to go to all 50 of our deputies and say, guys, you're getting, your psychological evaluation will be on this day. Here's your hour. It just doesn't work that way, because, those guys are going to come in exactly what you said. They're going to be a closed door, a closed book. They're not going to open up. Even if they are in need of something, in need of talking, it just puts them back on their heels, and it doesn't feel like it's in the right way. It's being forced upon them. So, I personally agree that we have to do better in mental health. And we personally at the Sheriff's Office we've implemented programs. We've got employee assistant programs. We've got free phone calls to talk to folks if you get to that point where you need to do that. So we've put that in place ourselves. But to be mandated from Springfield that this has to be done on an annual basis is just not the right way to do this. Not to mention, the $15,000 a year that's going to cost to do just my agency, my 50 people. That comes out to about $15,000 a year, which is money that's
Statewide?
unfunded. No, just for my 50 deputies, $15,000.
Just in Woodford
Just in
County.
Woodford County, we'll pay $15,000 next year to have our annual psychological evaluations mandated from Springfield.
Now, will that come out of taxpayer dollars, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But and here's the problem.
Then you're creating a resentment.
Sure.
And that is exactly what's going to happen, right? And there's people in the community that suffer from mental illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why do the officers get these I can already see it now. Why do the officers get all of the resources and programs for their mental health evaluations, and I can't afford to go and seek a therapist?
That's a good point as well from that side.
It's
sure.
just like, what?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Why would the Safety Act be pushed out there? And is it because of the BLM riots that happened? Is it because of George Floyd? Are they trying to do something that kind of broad brushes this whole police black community tension?
I don't know that if I would say that, but the broad brush is absolutely an accurate statement. That's exactly what the Safety Act is. And it was written by a group of folks who have no knowledge of real world policing. They don't have the experience that I have. So they're legislating on something that they have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea what those unintended consequences are going to be with what they're painting with that broad brush in this act. So, that's where I think I have a unique position. I know I have a unique position where I can stand on that House floor and I can advocate for our police officers and our police chiefs and our sheriffs, because when I hear this discussion on the floor, I can look to those things and say, this is what's going to happen if you do this. This is what's going to happen if you do that, because I have that real world experience that nobody has down there right now. Now, I am happy to say that there are a few police officers running for the General Assembly, either the House or the Senate side this year. So, hopefully we can get a couple of those folks in and we can start to have a say in this. But, this Safety Act, never did any of these legislators come back to, say, the Illinois Sheriff's Association or the Illinois Chiefs of Police Association and ask their opinions as this was being written. You know,
That's something I've heard just throughout the community, is that nobody listens to the sheriff's office here locally. And it's just nice to see politicians once in a while come in and just sit and listen.
Right.
That's what I've heard, you know, about some gubernatorial candidates that have come and talked to our sheriff, John Sandage. And why, I just don't know why it's happening. But we do have to take a quick break. We'll be back, and we're going to talk more about this Safety Act and body cams. Keep it right here, Conservative Cat.